This is part two of Uncommon Conversations, episode 26, with Spike Healy, a scuba instructor and a fan of philosophy and empowering the individual, and someone who I believe seems to be fundamentally oriented towards the good. So let me try to bring him on here. I'll send him an invite. And then we'll continue on from there. Alrighty. Yeah. So I kind of like ended a long tirade there. So your turn.
I appreciate the touch on the healthcare, sick care thing. If we want to step back to that, because that's very much on the forefront of what we're trying to do in terms of, also financial freedom, but the sick care vicious cycle, dude, it's terrible because we haven't done any kind of preventative stuff, any kind of education, any kind of stuff on the forefront. And then it is just all get sucked in to the system, feel trapped, feel scared, feel like we don't know what to do, and then have to pay out the wazoo to get fixed. And it sucks to be broken, and it sucks to have to get fixed. And it's with everything. I mean, even like my girlfriend's sister she just graduated high school, wanted to start going to the gym, started going to the gym. A few months in, was feeling great, and then all of a sudden was in an immense amount of pain, so much pain, changed her whole attitude. She just was sad and complaining and crying because her leg hurt so bad. Eventually had it looked at, didn't even know how to get an answer. Everyone's just, I bet it's this, you should do this, don't worry about it, forget it, it'll go away. Eventually went to a physical therapist. Turned out she had 3 bulging discs in her lower spine from doing improper exercises, which me and my girlfriend had told her, you're doing these wrong. Can we show you some things? And she said, no. And I don't really know where she was getting her information from. But
She was like, but when I have my spine like this, it's very strong.
Yeah. But
this is my deadlift technique.
Working with any kind of professional, didn't get any kind of proper education, didn't do sports in high school besides swimming. So there's no weightlifting component really to that. And now she has to get fixed. And it's like, okay, you got your diagnosis, we can fix you. And luckily that, this is a situation where it's more like, hey, you fix yourself. We'll just show you some stretches. But the whole time she could have fixed herself. But there's no education. There was nobody focusing on that. And a gentleman that I know had his very simple 13-step process on how to fix everything. And it's basically like, instead of spending all the money that we did in the past 2 years, we put it into banning certain very harmful substances, with drugs, alcohol, and certain foods. We live stream education on movement and breathing and meditation and thinking. We share information about how to properly hunt for our food and arm the citizens. So, civil war, or not civil war, but just so that we are our right to bear arms, but we know how to use it. It's not, because I've learned I can get a gun, but then to have to learn how to use it, very expensive doing this, blah, blah, blah. Education.
I want to touch real quick on, you talked about getting rid of drugs and alcohol. I think, so for me, like my overall philosophy is like when the government is going to treat something illegally or as illegal, then that means they're going to either fine you, which is taking your money, which is theft, because they're just human beings, like acting in a collective sort of way, but they're still human beings acting on other human beings. So the morality is fundamentally like we're on the same plane. So it's either theft or kidnapping, meaning they take you from your life and they go put you somewhere else you don't want to be. And so if whatever you did isn't as bad as those things, I just don't think the government should really be that involved. Or if they are, it should be with very gentle hands. Like I'm for, instead of an FDA, we could just require businesses to have people that that test their best practices and their safety standards and their sanitation like a different business. So like right now, you go get a kosher qualification for your food, or you go get a halal for the Muslim community. You go get a halal qualification for your food. Those are private standards that exist, totally separate from the FDA already. If you just require businesses to have something like that, and they can't have any personal business relationship with the company they hired to do that, you basically have created a private sector FDA that has all the benefits of the private sector, but serves that broader function. So that kind of a light touch version of big government is something that I could see like being worthwhile. But with the alcohol and the drugs thing, that's what I wanted to talk about. I think fundamentally teaching people how to handle these substances is our primary should be of primary focus. The issue is we have a society where you're told don't do this until this magical day when all of a sudden you're ready to handle it, and then now that you're past that date, now you can now handle it. So you have a bunch of rebellious teenagers that get into drugs too early and the wrong way and at some stupid party with a bunch of their idiot friends, instead of having a couple beers at home with their parents to see what the effect of the beer is on them. And so they can sort of sit there and sort of take it in. And then they'll understand, okay, if I want to get really, really wasted, I only need 10 shots. I don't need 40. And if I just want to feel a little buzz, I need a beer and a half, and I'm good. And then you can say, well, I don't really want, if you're a Mormon family or whatever, I don't want alcohol in my family. I don't want it as a part of my life. It doesn't seem healthy at all, so I just don't want it there. Then you can make that choice. But if the choice is, ooh, don't do that thing, that's one of those taboo things, definitely don't do that. The defiant human spirit is going to say, go screw yourself. I'm going to go do this thing. And so teaching people how to handle alcohol in their life, even if that means ultimately getting it out of their life, is I think how society should try to approach addiction, as opposed to just removing temptation from your sphere. And also, addiction is its own issue separately we have to handle. Much of the homeless issue is an addiction issue. Much of the prison population issue is an addiction issue. Many people in everyday life that just go to the 12-step programs have addiction issues. So I think we just have this broader societal problem. We're sort of wanting to piecemeal, and it's alcohol, it's fentanyl, it's this, it's that, it's food, it's gambling, it's whatever. But it's really just humans have a hard time handling these things, and it takes personal development to be able to maturely handle strong substances. And I think we got to try to get people to that point and then sort of operate off of that main goal instead of it being removing temptation from, because as soon as the temptation shows up, then you're going to be more susceptible to it because you weren't told to like think about it and approach it thoughtfully from the jump. It was like, especially when parents are like really, really top down with their kids are going to be like, as soon as this happened with me with weed, not because my mom was trying to be a propagandist, but my grandfather's a pastor. So like, we're a very serious family, very Christian. And so in my household, I was sort of taught to think of marijuana like any other drug, like heroin, like cocaine, like whatever. I knew it wasn't as lethal, but I just assumed what you're getting out of it is the same as all those other things. What I've learned since is that you can actually get a lot more out of it, a lot more rich, reflective, sort of chemically induced reflective meditation state. You're more sensitive, you're more connected, you're more present, you're more, in tune with certain emotions. Whatever emotions you feel you're more sensitive, so they're amplified. And so there's all sorts of like, and even with alcohol, like I learned to loosen up because of alcohol. I was a real tightwad and had a hard time being fun before I just got drunk a couple times and like played a football game while I was a little bit too drunk. And so I was like slipping all over the place, but still having a good time, and a couple of other things where I just learned so it changed my state of consciousness, and I brought lessons from that state of consciousness. And I think that is the game. That is the best way to approach it. And if you just want to have fun and you're not hurting anyone else, you're still paying your taxes and raising your kids and all that kind of stuff, is there a victim? Is there harm being done? Or are you just engaging in a particular pleasure that other people might not like? So that's sort of my overall. So I think like being weary of drugs and having freedom from drugs for yourself is important. Absolutely. But I think with the government and stuff, they're better off just being hands off with it and just trying to handle addiction where they can.
Totally agree. And I knew that that share would get you off at some point, which I'm happy it did. And I think the point on that wasn't just ban it. It was more of an answer of like, if we're feeling sick and diseased as a nation, here's how we should fix that. But you're right.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
saying, just taking out alcohol would be one disastrous for this country. Just the amount of people addiction, you can't just put that many people into withdrawal like overnight or even like in 18 months. And it does the rest of the themes there were education on personal development, gardening, growing. So it would need to be education on substance abuse because that is the real thing. It's not just alcohol or it's not just weed. It is. And I found myself a rebellious kid who didn't drink until he's, end of high school, experimented with
You
drugs.
drank until you were 21.
uh,
No, I'm not saying that's you, but there are many people that are like that, that like they're really into drinking until they're 21 and then they're like, whatever, I'll have a beer.
yeah.
They're like, they're more chill about it.
I was 22. But yeah, absolutely. And then it transferred to something else, peanut butter or this or that. And it is that addiction thing where I felt there was a void that needed to be filled, and I was never informed of how best to do that. And again, no one talks about these things. We're just thrown to the wolves and not talk. That was very interesting.
It's really interesting that our society has that. So someone in my family, I won't say who, but someone in my family did talk to me once, and I was asking about, I think, religion or politics, one of the two. And they sat me down and they said, in polite society and in polite conversation, we don't discuss religion or sex or politics or money. And I was like, and so I from an early age, I was always like, hey, let me sit back and see what my gut feeling is on that thing and like my assessments. And within about 5 seconds, I realized like four of the most fundamental and important parts of human life you're not supposed to talk about. It's improper to talk about. So like we all want to have a beautiful, amazing sex life with that one special person or with the 1,000 special people, whatever your orientation is. I think some people are orientated towards the other one, but sex is a part of human life. That's how we create more humans. It's an intimate part of things and a beautiful part of life or a horrible part of life. And it all needs to be discussed. It's very important. Politics, same thing. Money, same thing. Religion. Now we're talking about like the final destination of your soul in eternity. And we're not supposed to talk about it? I rejected that from the jump, and I've sort of always been that way, where I'm always like these topics that are meaningful are the ones I want to talk about. I don't really care about who Kim Kardashian tweeted about last week. And Kim has done some good political work, so I'll even I'll give her a little extra respect than I used to. I never watched any of her shows. I don't understand why she's like famous or anyone finds her interesting, but
that's kind of that. You ever heard that pyramid about people who talk about people, things, or ideas? And you kind of mentioned earlier with your political talk is we're talking about the people. Do you like this or do you not like that? Or are you talking about the ideas behind immigration and the things? And maybe you don't have the answer. And the way you talk doesn't like, this is the answer. You're like, this is our answer. And okay, you say an answer, I say an answer. We come up with a new answer, and then we find a new answer based off that. And that seems a lot more effective than saying the gossip, really, which is what a lot of it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I was all about the meaningful conversation and not so much about the meaningless conversation, because like to me, like if you think of like these four states where we're engaged in really meaningful conversation, or I'm on my own engaging in really interesting intellectual topics, or I'm on my own chilling, just doing my thing, wanting to relax and not think too much, or we could talk about nothing. really enthusiastically and talk about things that are not meaningful whatsoever. That last one has almost no interest to me. I have no desire to spend my time just having a mechanical conversation, just having a conversation just to have it. Like that comes with being a social human being. Like I'm kind of being a little bit mean in my framing of that, just because that's my perspective. That's not like the proper perspective. This is purely subjective for me. Um, and so I really I would rather just be by myself doing nothing than be engaged in a meaningless conversation. And so that isn't necessarily the best thing for having a bunch of friends or strong social ties or supports or whatever. But I do my best to be a good person, to always question if I'm not doing the right thing. And yeah, so that's me.
That's something I had a hard time with a few years ago. I had like an awakening. And I was like, man, I don't know if I had a concussion or I have serious brain damage, but I can't relate to people anymore, and I can't talk to them, and I don't understand how people are having conversations, because everything we were talking about was just like, again with this stuff, for real. Like, I don't understand, why are we talking about this? And I felt extremely trapped. This is my last year in college, and I
What was your So you said you're 26 now?
yeah.
When was your last year in college?
I was 23. I did 5 years of college. That was due to
Okay.
some extracurricular drinking activities that set me back a semester.
Okay. So I'm trying to think. So that's 2017, 2016?
2017, it probably was. 2016, 2017, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I went to college. I'm 1 year older than you, and I went to college back in like 2016. 2016, I did a semester and a half, and then pulled out after the second semester. I was pushing myself too hard the second semester, and that's why I ultimately quit. But I was already sort of wanting to quit because my sociology and anthropology professors were clearly politically. I don't even think they understood. Like the anthropology professor didn't understand how he was politically uh, bent, but he was. So the fundamental aspect of anthropology is like you're studying. It is the study of people, the study of the study of other people. And one aspect of it is you don't want to study other people with a judgmental lens. But he took that to, you should not judge other cultures ever at any point for any reason at all. And I was like, that is programming to get you to not understand that there could ever be something negative about other people or immigrants, and that any conversation of that sort would make you go down the road of that person hates that person, they're being judgmental, they're judging another culture. And we see that language of judging another culture, I've heard that said by many people. So I saw how there was political bent. I saw in my sociology class how she, instead of asking us what is the appropriate way to measure poverty, she asked, we measure poverty by looking at the cost of housing, food, and water. Why is that wrong? That's how she said it. She said, this is how we do it. Why is it wrong? Explain. And I was here I can think of reasons why you might say it's a limited way of analyzing poverty, but you're not even making it about, could that be the right way? You're saying it's wrong. Now explain it to me like it's wrong. And everyone in the class is like, we're thinking. And and so I was sitting there like, holy crap, man, this is like a city college in the middle of California no one knows about, Modesto City College. Like, this is low level stuff, and this is happening. So I'm like, oh God, we're in for it. And so I pulled out of college. I didn't like it. It felt like less of a waste of time compared to high school, but it still felt like a giant waste of time. Like if I wanted to go learn Italian or learn about anthropology, why would I listen to some idiot who gets paid, 40 grand a year to talk about it at the city college, or go listen to the greatest sociologists in existence online, right? And read Durkheim and read a lot of these old sociological thinkers and what they actually thought, and then absorb it that way. That's infinitely better than trying to get some teacher who has a limited understanding and is 3 chapters ahead of you, um, getting them to explain these grander societal, issues. Because like no matter what the field is, sociology, economics, whatever, like there are people, especially in politics, if it relates to politics at all, there are people that are in different camps and have different opinions and everything. And you can't just be like, well, this is the way to go. With any of it, you can't ever say this one expert said something, ergo it's the facts. It's just the ultimate knowledge. You gotta, because some like economists are dumber than other economists. It's kind of weird to think of an economist as dumb, but that's how it is. Like the truly top of their field, exceptional people are going to be rare, and you're better off listening to them than you are listening to someone at your local city college.
I think we had much different college experiences. I took the C's Get Degrees motto to heart early on and used the whole 5 years as an experiment, life experience. Joined a fraternity, played rugby.
Where'd you go? What college? And where did you? Where were you? Because rugby, I'm assuming that's not the United States.
No,
So
University of Delaware.
oh, okay, the University of Delaware. Okay,
Yeah,
okay then.
a lot of programs over there actually.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, but I
So
was studying
your
cosmetology.
experience in college was very much like, um, well, what was your experience in college?
A lot of socializing and drugs and alcohol and socializing and realizing how I could utilize my classmates to assist me and almost motivate them to help me out. And I was studying hospitality business management, so I was learning about people to help me learn about how to get through the course, which was a good time for me overall. But did not spend time learning for sure in the traditional sense, which sounds like I was happy I did, because I had a lot of friends who would stress out about their studying and then still do subpar, and I just took the alternate route, and I think it served me pretty well. Obviously,
You tried.
early on I had the idea that I was not going down a traditional path of a 9 to 5 wearing pants kind of job.
Yeah, I share that. For it wasn't so much like it was like if I could find an alternative path, I was dead set on trying to find that alternative path. But I've always sort of had this in the back of my head, like it would really just be a matter of me deciding and settling on a 9 to 5, and then I think I could find happiness with that. But until I knew that there wasn't a better path for me out there or a better way of doing things, I wanted to always sort of be on the lookout for that. And um, and so I've sort of found it with this. Like I want to release an ebook on everything in politics, all of the policy stuff, because in 2018, when I had the handful of really good ideas that were unique to me, I tried making a YouTube channel and videos, and I realized like I did not feel prepared to really be a political commentator. I felt like I was a guy on YouTube with a few good ideas. And so I went and said, I need to articulate my ideas, and the best way I know or I've heard to do that is through writing. I've never been a writer. I've always disliked writing, just because I think because I have like slightly shaky hands, so I think like it might be slightly more strenuous. I definitely write slower than other people, but that might just be practice. Anywho,
Can you not type?
I knew I had to write to, huh?
You can't type. That doesn't count.
Oh, well, okay, typing, yeah, sorry, yeah, I do. So I did type this book up. I didn't write it out, but yeah, I didn't get into computers until like 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. So like I grew up mostly without computers, and so like typing wasn't like a normal thing for me. Even like through high school, I kind of like avoided it. But anywho, I needed to articulate my ideas a little bit more, write about it, and sort of reflect on what I was writing. And so I went to a website, found a list of 50 topics people debate on politics, wrote them all down, and that was like the outline for this writing project I had. And that has ultimately turned into what will be a book and an ebook, first an ebook, and then an audio book, and then an actual book. But just on politics in general, just trying to talk about all these things, because I spent 3 years listening to like from March of 2017. Yeah, March of 2017 till January of 2020, I was a car detailer listening to stuff in my ear and thinking about politics and trying to understand it. And in 2018 is when that sort of transition happened where I had a few good ideas of my own. And so it would literally, I just kind of got a little frustrated with it's funny, he's a communist, which goes to show you I will talk with anyone. He's a communist, and we were going back and forth. And I've talked more with him through text between comment sections and interactions, DMs or whatever, than anyone else. And at some point, I was finally like, bro, I just go look at the video, the hours and hours of video I've already put up. Otherwise, we're going to be talking for forever. Like, I literally have 153-ish pages of me talking like I talk now, really efficiently, in written form. So it's a lot of content. It's a lot of stuff to get through. And so the idea of like trying to do it through conversation or anything like that, like I can give bits and pieces and whatever we happen to talk about in this conversation. And if it's a topical debate where we're talking about Afghanistan or foreign policy, then I'll have things related to foreign policy and stuff that I can bring up. But the idea of ever being like, okay, here are my political views in anything under like 10 to 15 hours sounds like ridiculous to me. Like I could just keep going and going and going like that. So, so the book was necessary for that, to be able to say, like, to be able to put it outside of myself so that I wasn't the only source of the ideas and people could go elsewhere. And more importantly, when people can get to where they understand my views fully, they can critique my views and help evolve my views. And our, like you said with the conversation, our back and forth will produce even better and newer ideas. So, and yeah, so for all those reasons, I've sort of found that path, found that way of making money that is not a traditional job that I think I can actually do it. I have to execute and pull the trigger and then not sell my soul, but also become a book salesman. But other than that, you know, I found the path. And what people got to understand is it took me 10 years of trying to actively find what I might be interested in and want to do to really get a direction on that. I was just kind of exploring and talking to people and seeing where my interests went, and felt like I didn't really have a path for the longest time. And the most important thing was believing in incremental, you know, growth, having the growth mindset. If I can grow a little every day, that's good. And I never gave up hope that I would get my shit together. I believed that it would happen. I believed I would get over whatever that mythical psychological hill is that you have to get past to feel like you've gotten your shit together. I had faith that I would hit that point, and I have a lot of shit to get together still, but I've sort of crossed whatever that barrier is of like feeling like I've got a handle on some stuff. So, yeah, so anyone out there that's exploring their own stuff or trying to find that path for themselves, you got to have patience and love for yourself throughout this process, because you're just a person figuring it out. And like, you know, how, I don't know if you were into scuba as a kid, but you probably, if you weren't, you probably would have been like a scuba instructor. That's really what I'm going to end up doing. Like you would not have seen it coming. And, yeah, an introverted 16-year-old Jordan would not have expected him to be a podcaster. That's pretty nuts. So,
Yeah, even a few years ago, coming out with that hospitality degree, I was like, what? So I'm going to work in a hotel. I'd been working in a hotel every summer. I was working as assistant front office manager. And I was like, dude, I can't do this. The people, the coworkers, not it. The location is not it. The scheduling is not it. And I just had a strong calling to not be there, and I had to leave. So I left, packed up the car, and just started driving. I actually did make it overseas for a little bit to Australia, played some rugby. But then when I settled down here, I was like, okay. I just started Googling jobs outside, jobs with boats, jobs without shorts, until something popped up and got into the dive industry. And then I was really struggling to make ends meet because the whole thing is that, like, you know, you're a diver, you don't make any money, but it's a lifestyle job. And that's when I found the network marketing job with the superfoods company, and I've been able to blend the two perfectly well together and balance everything out. But it's still like, well, where are both of them going to flow? Because I just started teaching scuba this past year, but I had been in the diving industry for a year prior to that. So it's like always kind of flowing into different avenues. And you've got really a good thing on your side that you already like to talk to people, because I did not at the time. It wasn't until I got down here 2 years ago that I was like, I'm just going to have to reach out to people, because I can't do this alone. Before, I had my dad's finances, my mom's love, and all my friends from college, and I was like in a little box in university, and I was like, oh, I could do this alone. I have all this support. This is easy. I can be mean to other people. But now it's like, dude, I just should talk to people, because I realized, like, I can't feed myself. I can't live. I can't have fun. I can't have it all myself. I'm going to need support. I'm going to need friends. I'm going to need allies. And also, I'll just talk to other people, because they don't have to be on my side. And I won't know if they are either until I talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. It's really cool that you intuitively or vaguely understood the kind of a job you wanted. And so you just went sort of looking vaguely for that kind of a thing. Like, how many people would like search for jobs outdoors? Like, even if they want to work outdoors, how many people would actually like take it to that obvious sort of point of action to be like, let's look for jobs outdoors. Let's look for jobs near the water. Let's look for, and just start exploring. You had no idea you'd be doing this, but you had a sense of what you wanted. And so you sort of got in the area of what you wanted and then started navigating. And I think that is an important lesson for people to understand. Like, you could have, I don't know what other jobs exist around your job, but there might have been even other jobs that would have been more safe or more traditional. Like, if you're like a lifeguard or something like that, right? If you could make money being a lifeguard, then you can kind of be in and around that kind of a same area. And then you'd talk to the surfers, the scuba people, and then you'd find your path. So people need to listen to that. I was a car detailer because I wanted to be away from people and listen to interesting shit and not have to think for my job. And I found it. I was making good money. I was an independent contractor, so they didn't take any money out of my paycheck. So I got the full check, which was a lot better than having that 20% taken out. And so I was living pretty comfortably. I got to eat out a bunch throughout the week. I love eating out. I love going to, El Pollo Loco and getting a double avocado chicken bowl or whatever it might be. And so I was able to live the life I wanted a little bit. I got to listen to interesting stuff, feed my mind, sort of be making progress on that front, and the learning. Like, the thing is, like, I hated the education system, but I loved learning. I loved talking about ideas, and so I had a job where I could do something that was nice work. I was outside, making cars look clean is very visually satisfying, because you get to see it be all whatever, and then it be pristine and perfect. And I was a very much like a detail, cleanliness, like amongst all the cleaners, because it was for rental car companies. So it wasn't like detailing. It was just getting it good enough for the next rental or next renter or rental. And so amongst all the cleaners, I was one of the more detail-oriented people, and I really liked that feeling of everything being clean and completely done well. And liked listening to stuff. I was out like behind the building cleaning these cars, so I was mostly away from customers. So I would just occasionally say, "Oh, hi, hey, how you doing?" Whatever. And that was my jam. Like, I like talking to people to a certain degree, and I like talking about ideas, but being forced to talk to people I don't want to talk to, I've never been a big fan of that particular gig. So even with this politics stuff, like, I'm trying to talk to everyone, but there's some people I'm just going to say, screw you, dude. Like, there's some people that I'm like, are either objectively aren't worth my time, or they just rub me the wrong way. But anyway, so I like that part of the job where I didn't have to deal with people unless I really wanted to. And even then, it was like, I would go park the car, walk in through the front door, give the keys to the Hertz agent, and then walk into the back. So like at most I'd be like saying hi to everybody or whatever, or hear one of them. What was really cool was when one of the customers or someone would randomly mention something political. So then I could be like, oh, I have something to say about that. Um, and so that was cool. And this is a separate thing. I was going and donating plasma a couple times a week, and there's a lot of young hematologists, I think is what it's called, or phlebotomists. That's what it is. There's a lot of young phlebotomists that would just, that would handle all the machinery and injecting you, or like putting the thing in your arm and then taking your plasma out and all that. Um, they were all really young people trying to get higher up in the medical field. And so I got really cool exposure to those people. So it was like being at the college without being at the college, so to speak, because they were all at the college too, and they all lived in like dorms near each other or whatever. Um, and so that was really cool. So that little time in my life, I'll always look back on as very happy. And there's nothing from the outside that anyone would point to say, oh, that guy's being successful. Oh, that guy must be really happy with his life. Oh, that guy's whatever. Like from the outside, I was a loser, wasting my time, wasting my talent and my potential. When in reality, I was feeding the computer up here for all this political stuff I'm doing now. And so
Filling
like
up your
at the
cup.
time, even to me, I was like, why are you wasting your time doing all this stuff you like to do? Like, why aren't you more serious? Why aren't you going and getting a real job and you have all this, like that was an internal narrative as much as it was from other people that I was like, why aren't you figuring, like I said, why haven't you figured your shit out? Why haven't you gotten your shit together? Why are you doing all these things? And it was me following my guts and my intuition more than my brains. And being caring more about having a happy life and a meaningful life that I would be satisfied with than just doing what other people tell me is valuable. Um, and that is very powerful. I think it's very powerful to listen to yourself that way. And if you don't care, if you genuinely aren't called in some direction, or you're like, I like doing art on the weekends, but that's about it for me. I don't have any higher aspirations. That you're just as beautiful and amazing as a human being as anyone who decides differently. Like that's the most beautiful aspect of human beings, is we're all given our own little stamp on things that we should be able to accept with love.
Dude, you were filling up your cup. That's what you were doing. So you were ready to pour into others. And to answer the other question, I was not a scuba diver growing up. My uncle was a big technical diver and had shared some stories and videos. But that 5th year I spent in college, I spent the whole year in a scuba class, pool training. So when I got down here, I had a really strong background in scuba, and I had the fins and the mask in the car that I packed, and that skyrocketed me to success here. So you never know what small little piece is going to work out. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was in need of, because the diving thing, it's like, this week we can dive every day. Next week we can't dive at all. On day, off day, it's totally random. So I was like, I need to find a job that I can work on my own schedule, because I had tried other gigs trying to teach people, Chinese kids, English online. It's like, you make your own schedule within this framework. And I was like, that doesn't work for me. And that's when I was like introduced to the opportunity online of this kind of super flexible work. And that's when I've been able to balance it. So like everything does kind of flow into itself really well. And I never knew what was going to be the piece that I needed, or like it's easy to overlook stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't really know. You can't know. So this is an interesting side point, and then I want to get back to what you were just sort of talking about. We can never have absolute knowledge or wisdom, and so you can't really know that what you're doing at any given time is ultimately the right thing to be doing with your time. So you have to rely on wisdom and a lot of these things from people, but also your intuition and your gut, and be honest with yourself and authentic to yourself. Um, but but wisdom and definitely being able to pull from that stuff, I think, is very important, because you can't know. We have to act on faith, because we cannot be omnipotent about whether or not what we're doing at any one given point is like the ultimate right thing to be doing. Um, so you have to have that sort of comfort in the gray area a little bit, like follow your instincts, your intuition, the wisdom of the past and everything. But ultimately, like we are explorers trying to broaden our was it understood territory? I'm trying to think of the known territory, unknown. I don't know. Anyways, we have we're always sort of stretching our limitations a little bit and broadening our view of the world and everything. And so you kind of have to uh, play that game a little bit of exploration and mapping and then detailing and determining which is your favorite spot, which is the dangerous spot, and then going back and then exploring somewhere else. And that's very much just how humans are. So that's good. Uh, what 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 was your intro to that business you're talking about? The flexible one that like offered you that stuff. How did you get introduced to that? You said network marketing company.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, how did you get introduced to that? And yeah, tell me that story.
I had, like I said, been literally thinking I need to create a situation, or a situation needs to be presented to me because I am in desperate need of financial work that's going to be flexible. And Troy Casey, YouTube video, the guy I've been following, he's a health guy, calls himself the certified health nut. I had been following his stuff for a number of years, kind of the health care, not the sick care, the preventative stuff, the joints, how we eat, how we live, how we think, how we breathe. And it was like, hey, this is the company that I have been working with for the past 5 years or so. And it's where a lot of my income comes from. Because I always wondered, I was like, this guy makes YouTube videos, but I don't think that's where he makes his money from. And it was from the power of this business model, which I don't know if you know anything about network marketing, and sharing the products, which perfectly align with this mission. So I
Well,
found
basically, like what's interesting about network marketing is it's like um, it's a mix. It's interesting because it's a mixture of like
very
adopting the
controversial.
it's adopt oh very controversial.
Yeah.
For me, it's always been about is the product worth the price? Because sometimes those companies the product isn't worth the price, and sometimes it is. Um, there was one company like that where I knew what they were selling. I could just tell someone to go on to bodybuilding.com to go get for like a third of the price. And so I was like, I can't really be down for this kind of thing. Like you go make your money. I love you. You do your thing. But so it's largely with that. But what I wanted to say was, on one hand, it's utilizing the most substantive marketing tool, which is word of mouth, person to person. Um, but what's interesting is a lot of those companies don't believe in advertising, which I don't understand. A lot of those companies have told me don't advertise your stuff, and I'm like, that seems like a self-imposed handicap. Maybe not directly marketing the company, but even indirectly marketing yourself. Like it makes sense to like I can understand why the company wouldn't want to be like you represent us, go out there and make an ad on our behalf, but advertising and like not doing door to door, person to person, personal networking, uh, like if you're an influencer or whatever, it's just about broadening your customer base and touching basis and trying to get the right hook in. Um, so, but the word of mouth peer to peer growth is definitely like the most organic and the most potent in terms of actually creating customers.
So I'll try and touch on that advertising piece. Maybe a small part of it is because we do represent the company. So if I say, hey, this product cures this, I could shut down the whole company if I'm not super clear on the the fact that like I can't make claims based off of stuff. It can support things. It can help with stuff. So that's part of the reason I don't want to go out there and speak publicly about something. It's I can draw interest and use the attraction marketing, and then share a resource from the company that says this is what the product is. This is what it helps with, so that I don't have to be the person, because that's not necessarily my role. What I do like about it is that we're kind of that distribution of wealth. I almost brought this up earlier, but we talk about these companies that we're like, oh, we want this distribution of wealth, these CEOs, they drive these fancy cars, jets, and all this stuff. And a lot of times these CEOs have all this money, or these CEOs of a marketing firm have all this money, and all this money is getting pushed that way, where now it's distributed to a number of people, just average Joes that want to use the product and want to make some money from it. So I think that's an incredible part of it, and it does come back to that word of mouth too, where you get to do that, which is probably the best way. Which is the reason that this company came to that way, is like sitting on a shelf at GNC. What's the coolest label? The one with flames or whatever, muscles and stuff. Okay, well, what if we don't want to sell off of that sexy factor? What if we want to just be the best, but you don't know it's the best, because we're not going to pump thousands and millions of dollars into advertising and the sexiness. But what if we just know it is, and if I tell you it is and you experience it, then you know it is too. So word of mouth is super powerful, which I'm sure it's kind of the same in politics too.
No, for sure. Most of the politics is interesting because it's like the actual people that are sort of participating is like a small fraction of the overall people. So like the average political person has the smart person that they know in their own life, who listens to the smart source somewhere out there, who all of their ideas are based off of a think tank somewhere else. And so that's sort of like, it's like 1, 2, 3 steps removed from the people engaging with like the core ideas. So the people that are networking and that are those in-between people are the people that will sway the election, because it's the person that you know in your life that is willing to talk about politics to you and share with you in that, or that is like, many people are like, I they're political, but they have their person they just go and sort of decide to agree on everything with. That person is the person that's like the peer-to-peer networker that you want to deal with. It's not so much the average Joe, and it's not so much like the think tanks, which is interesting. So it's close, but it's more centralized. Like it's not like a customer for your kind of a product is everyone, but a customer for, are you willing to have engaged conversation in politics, is like a niche within a niche, you know? So, yeah.
Huh. But conversation, presenting, communication skills, they all flow.
The fundamentals are there. It's just that I was just sort of wanting to point out that little interesting difference. But yeah, the fundamentals and the sort of flesh and blood actions of it all are the same. Even with advertising, ideally, if you're being honest, you're communicating truth. If you're not, then that's a different thing. But if you're like, if I say to one person whatever this thing is, or I'm saying to 1,000 people this exact same thing, it is sort of still that person. Like, it's person to person. It's just diluted. It's one person for 1,000 instead of 1 to 1. But anyhow, I'm overanalyzing because that's what I do.
It's a lot more fun that way.
Cool.
I like that stuff, and I've overanalyzed. Part of my time with that 5th year, I took a conspiracy class, and because I picked up a philosophy minor with all the scuba diving, I had time for both, which was beautiful.
That's cool.
So fake news, conspiracy, all that stuff. So I was like dead set on getting into this business model and like picking it apart. And I was like ripping through the compensation plan and like the company. And I was like, I bet somewhere in here it says something. And I got really in my head and tried to pick it apart, because I think deep down I was afraid that, because the communication skills, the presentation, the listening, and the people skills, I didn't think that I had those or could work on them. But turns out you can work on this.
What I'm really sort of coming around to, and what was my main obstacle, I mean, you got to care about things being good enough, but often, the perfect is the enemy of the good, that sort of phrase. Like, we'll choose to not act because it's not quite good enough, instead of realizing that by getting repetition and just engaging in the thing, you'll get better. And so even if you're not where you want to be, if you just start doing it, eventually you'll get there. And everyone, and that's like a truism of life. So the number one thing you got to remember is no one's going to judge you for that. Like, I don't judge anyone who's hopped on. I know one 16-year-old kid who got onto social media to be a Trump supporter 5 years ago when he was like 11 or 12 years old and knew literally nothing other than he very much loves the Trump. Um, and that, like, a lot of people might judge people for doing that kind of a thing. And I think you want to always be growing and trying to do a good job or whatever, and inform your people and be honest about your changing opinions. But it's better to jump in and get better through experience than to try to get better through preparation. Like, practice and preparation helps, but um,
That sounds,
experience and just repetitions do the trick too. It's really cool.
sounds like something you picked up from Elliot Hulse, of just like, were you listening to him for the philosophy or anything about the fitness? I guess we haven't really ever talked about your fitness
Okay,
background.
so I got back into it for the fitness side of it first. Um, so he touched on a few things like muscular imbalances with your girlfriend's friend, how she had like bulging discs because she had been like her muscles had recruited in the wrong way and there was an imbalance, and so it had shifted her bones one way. And by stretching the right way and negating the right neurological activity in the right spot and engaging neurological activity in others, you can slowly shift it back into place. A central theme of his strength and conditioning philosophy is he'll put a string up from the ceiling to the ground and have you stand there, and he'll analyze all of the imbalances and stuff like that. And he was a really deep guy, so I learned a lot from him. I studied him probably for 2 years straight, like more so. Like, I spent more time on him in the early days than I did anyone else. And so honestly, like, I think with that, I probably heard it from him or heard it from other people. But that particular lesson, the perfect is the enemy of the good, I've learned it like through experience, and it's absorbed into my psyche just in the last 3 months, like in a real way. I've heard it before, but that's different than tying it into what you're doing. And so, but at this point, because again, 12 years ago, I started studying Elliot Hulse. So to try to like differentiate what parts of my worldview are influenced by him and which ones aren't, I feel like it's all pretty, like, I feel like he's a foundation and I've built on top of it. So it's all sort of resting on him. And it'd be really hard to say like which came from what. Because I've listened to probably 15 to 20 extremely admirable men that I've emulated from, and beyond that, I've probably listened to 30 or more geniuses that, like, their character I don't necessarily like care about either way. I don't even know if they are a good or a bad person, but they're very, very intelligent and a great source of great information. So it's really difficult to say like any one of those people has like been the influence. I'd say it's like Elliot Hulse. If you've ever heard of Penn and Teller, Penn Jillette would be
Yeah,
another one.
interesting.
Thomas Sowell and Jordan Peterson. Those would be like, and Joe Rogan. That would be the five. Joe Rogan for intellectual curiosity and honesty and humility. Jordan Peterson for integrating religion and the scientific world. Thomas Sowell for sort of being a red pillar before red pilling was a thing, like breaking assumptions about politics and looking at data that differentiates between arguments. And then Penn Jillette was a libertarian, and Elliot Hulse was sort of like the foundation as a man, being a strength and conditioning coach and a philosopher, and a religious, and being into religion and sort of all the way down with the philosophy in that sense. Um, they all, taught me different things and had different parts. But I'd say like those are the top five. A pretty clear, solid top five would be Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, Thomas Sowell, Penn Jillette, and Elliot Hulse.
I could throw Joe Rogan in there. I would also put in Dr. Kelly Starrett. He is one of the fathers of mobility kind of guy, the supple leopard. Tommy John, former chiropractor, just he's gone pretty crazy with his thoughts, but about really that we heal ourselves, which I dig a lot. Troy
Have you
Gates,
checked out Wim Hof?
yeah. So I learned about Wim Hof right about the same time I learned about the oxygen advantage, which was how I understood my breathing and the carbon dioxide. I'm not so much into Wim's breathing techniques, although I do think that if we can get more people just hold their breath, that's fantastic, and that's what his intention is with that. I know he's come a long way of like, yeah, it's not just about the breathing. Like he used to think I have to do the breathing to get in the ice. Then he just started to get in the ice without the breathing. And he's like, oh yeah, it's just the brain. And he's been huge for me. Like I remember when I first flew to Australia to see my buddy, I always fast when I travel, especially on airplanes, because it's just, it's just junk, and it's might as well take the extra time to do a fast. So my plane also got delayed, so I've been fasting for probably like, hard to know with the time change, but like 72 hours. And I get to Australia and my buddy is way over here. And I'm like, well, I'm on a limited budget. I was traveling with just the money I'd made from that summer job. I'm not going to get to Australia and immediately spend money on a cab. So I'm going to walk 6 miles with my backpack, all this fasted, to go see him. And I know I can do it because of some of the stories that he's told of like the power of the human being and giving that strength to people, because people don't talk about that. You see people like, you got to get a cab. What are you going to do? Like my parents are traditional people. Get an Uber. Get an Uber. What are you thinking? It's do safe and smart. But no, I got to walk through Australia. That's why I came there, is to see it. So I got to see it, and I got to feel good about myself, and it was easy. It took up my morning, and then I got there perfectly on time, and I got to see him, and everything worked out. So the stories that he shared of like becoming the Iceman was a guy from Penn State who just found him and was like, I love you, dude. You're awesome. Went to go meet him and learned a lot from him, and they went on a bunch of adventures, and they co-wrote this book that's like really simple. It's not over the top. It talks even about just sticking your hands in ice and the 3 phases of it gets cold, and then it goes numb, and then it gets tingly, and then that's when you take it out. So understanding that kind of stuff is cool.
Yeah, that's cool, man. My brother is really into Wim Hof and sort of introduced me to a lot of his stuff. And at first I had sort of this is all voodoo kind of a reaction, because
I'm a big
there
dude.
are a lot of people. The issue is there's a lot of people that are fake and that are con men or shaman, charlatans, not shamans, but charlatans. And so that I'm always sort of like, especially my personality, I'm very like looking out for red flags and trying to like avoid any oncoming car crashes I could have seen a mile away. There's a lot of people you get in your life that cause a lot of damage and could have been removed with a little bit of wisdom much earlier in your life. Uh, but
Wim's hard to know because he just seems so crazy and over the top, and you're like, is this guy real? Have I known about this guy my whole life? Like, some of the stuff he's saying speaks so true to my heart, but I'm like, my head says this is freaking ridiculous. Your parents would think this guy's crazy, and I'm like, he is crazy, but in the most beautiful way. So that's a really tough one.
Yeah, he it's all about trust and substance to me. Like I'll give you the best example of why you can't judge this way all the time. One of my first not my first, but one of my major memories as an adult with politics was I watched this debate between Alex Jones. I don't know if do you know who Alex Jones is?
No.
Okay. Alex Jones is this guy from Texas. He's kind of a thick-set guy who is like the avatar of being a conspiracy theorist in the United States. He's the guy. He was the first guy banned off of Twitter and Spotify and Apple and all of these various things. He was like the first one to be the guy that's like, oh, the crazy guy got banned. So a bunch of people are like, oh, that's cool. And then, it's been escalating to where now Nicki Minaj might get taken off of Twitter. So that censorship got real stupid real quick. What was I? Dang it, I lost track of that. I was talking about censorship. Alex Jones. Alex Jones, who's this guy from Texas with a solid Texas accent, talking about how the elites are indoctrinating the kids and they're going to rape your children and they're going to, and it's like loud and intense and like, whoa. And then he was debating this guy who's Piers Morgan, who's this British cat who has this wonderful British accent and seems very, very calm. And Piers Morgan was saying that gun control and gun violence is this giant issue in the United States, and Alex Jones was saying that we actually have lower rates of gun violence or of overall violence than in the UK, even though they have gun control.